8 to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into what to expect at this world premiere event that's going to occur in conjunction with AUVSI's Exponential 2025 in Houston, Texas. Now, our event is on Monday, May 19th, the day before the show floor opens, so you're not missing running around the floor and seeing all those displays. And we will actually have a social hour the night before on Sunday, May 18th from 7 to 9 at the, it's called the Social Beer Garden in Houston. It's going to be awesome. So we'll drop a link for that for you all to sign up for that separately. But let's get into these amazing folks and the panels that they're going to be involved in to give you guys a little bit of insight into what to expect at the event. So let's go around the room with just really brief introductions. I'm going to start with Mary Caitlin Ray. So Mary Caitlin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Happy to. Thanks, Dawn, and really glad to be here. Thanks so much for hosting. And excited for Law Tech Connect. I'm Mary Caitlin Ray. I'm a senior counsel at Crowell and Mooring in Washington, D.C. I'm in our transportation group where I focus on aviation, including emerging technologies, drones, eVTOLs, all of those fun things that we're here to talk about. And before I joined Crowell, I was in the Office of the Chief Counsel at the FAA, where I focused on emerging technologies issues as well.
Awesome. And Crowell is one of our silver sponsors this year. We really appreciate you. Like, cannot put on this event without those kind of sponsorships. And same with Virginia, who's next. Virginia is from Akin, and they are our gold sponsors this year. So Virginia, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Virginia Hiner, Antypas. I'm a counsel here at Akin in the Washington, D.C. office. I sit in our telecom media and technology group here at the firm, and we have done a ton of work on drones and spectrum for drones and everything kind of related to that. So we're super excited to be participating this year.
And it's your first year, so I'm really excited to have you come to the event. I know Jennifer Richter leads your group, and we're excited to have her back as well. So really appreciate you ladies. And without further ado, Charlton Evans, this is Charlton's second year involved in the event. Charlton's from End State Solutions.
Hey, good morning, Don. Thanks for the invite. Charlton Evans, End State Solutions. I'm the CEO here, and we focus on emerging technology also. Effectively, we certify autonomous systems, both the hardware and the operations. So companies that are trying to get into drone delivery or eVTOL, advanced air mobility work, or some of the other fringe emerging technologies like high altitude pseudo satellite work, those are all things we focus on. We also do traditional aerospace certification work, but our specialty is really in the autonomous sector.
Very cool. Thanks so much. Charlton is a friend of Law Tech Connect for sponsorship. Really appreciate you. And last but certainly not least, we got Tracy Reynolds. Now, Tracy is still an active duty JAG judge advocate in the United States Navy. So I'm going to go ahead and do the disclaimer for her up front, having been a JAG in the Air Force myself. Tracy is here in her personal capacity. What she says does not represent the views of the Department of Defense, the United States Navy, or anybody else, quite frankly. So I think I covered all the bases there, Tracy, but over to you.
Thanks very much, Don, for that kind introduction. And I'm very excited to be part of this group. It's such an honor and privilege to be associated with Law Tech Connect, and I've had a great experience so far. In my 18 and a half years of Navy experience, I've advised on autonomous issues from the seabed to space. As everyone on this panel already knows, drones operate in the water column, they operate on the surface of water, they operate in the air, they operate in outer space. So it's a really dynamic environment in which both international and domestic legal issues and rules apply. So I'm excited to be part of this group to talk about all of that complexity and hopefully shed a little light on some processes that will benefit your audience, Don.
Oh, super. And by the way, just shameless plug also, Tracy is one of our global ambassadors for our Autonomy Global website, writing on space and maritime law. If you missed her op-ed on the nexus between those two fields of practice, especially as we launch and land spacecraft from the sea, check that out. It's just an amazing piece. So thank you for that, Tracy. But let's go ahead and get into our first panel that we're going to discuss. And it's panel 5. So this one is yours, Charlton. The title is AAM, Are We There Yet? Updates on tech and regs. So let's go ahead and tell us a little bit about Charlton. First of all, you were here last year at Law Tech Connect. You were involved in that AAA panel. You're back, so thank you for that. Why? Why are you back?
Well, the landscape continues to evolve, right? And now that the SFAR has dropped, as well as some other advancements in the FAA's approach to how they're going to certify advanced air mobility vehicles, eVTOLs, there's plenty to talk about. We're going to interpret what some of the OEMs are doing, and we're going to talk about some of the operations that are planned and upcoming. There have been some press releases, and we're going to help sort out kind of what the reality is versus what the marketing says. So we've got some great experts, Don Birchoff, of course, with True Weather Solutions, Tony Drummond from Future Flight Global, and Joel Robertson, who's a partner at Holland and Knight LLP. So great talent, a lot of insight, and promises to be a really, really informative session. We'll talk tech and regulatory. So not just the hardware and what they're doing in the space to enable it, but also what the rule sets are going to be that support it. And you're going to get a global perspective from these folks. They're definitely not just focused on US. Tony's traveled the world. Don, also former service member, has been all over and understands the nuances and intricacies of weather. So it's really going to be an expert panel. Very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, it is. And fingers crossed that we're going to have an FAA expert also joining us. But, as you know, Charlton, there's been an executive order that's prohibiting travel to conferences and other things for the federal government. I've done a lot of shows just in the last really 2 months, and the lack of presence of our military colleagues, of our federal employees, it's palpable. Hopefully maybe by March or by May, we'll have some of them back. But that's hope. It's not a plan. So we know we have some amazing experts on this panel. Speaking of, the current administration, I mean, there's a lot of changes going on. You mentioned the SFAR, which is the Special Federal Aviation Regulation that the previous administration signed out. What was it? November, right, Charlton? It was at the National Business Aviation Association's Business Aviation Conference and Expo. On the floor there at the time, Administrator Whitaker signed that live. That was quite a feat. That SFAR is kind of, even though it's like got a 10-year horizon for its viability, it's still just like temporary, right, Charlton?
Yeah, it is a temporary rule, but it's an enabling rule. So it provides the OEMs and the operators a path to understanding what they need to go do to certify pilots to really get into service. So it does break the dam a little bit in terms of creating a predictable landscape for these manufacturers to get into and create an operation that's sustainable. It will be an opportunity also for the FAA to understand what works and what doesn't. But it gets over the hump, over the starting friction of not knowing what the requirements are going to be just for the operation side.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, we mentioned last year Charlton was on a previous AAM panel. If you didn't get a chance to see that, we put these out as Law Tech Connect online. You can find those on Autonomy Global under the podcast tab, regulatory sub-tab. We talked about airmen, airspace, and aircraft, and Charlton really got deep into how certification works and things like that. We're going to do something a little different this year and really dive into where we're going with the technology and what are those global updates. So really looking forward to your panel, Charlton. Thanks again for participating and being a part of this. Charlton is a fearless moderator. I asked him to moderate this panel because I did see him at NBAA base and just did a masterful job there. So really looking forward to this panel, of course. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get into panel 6. Now, this one, Virginia, is yours. You are actually moderating this one. It's called Out of Sight Drones Around the World. So tell us a little bit about this one.
Sure. So during this panel, you can kind of expect to get a comprehensive overview of global drone regulations, and we'll be particularly focused on beyond visual line of sight, or BV loss operations. We've got an amazing panel of experts lined up from all around the world. We've got someone from Africa, an expert on Australia and the EU, as well as some academic perspectives. And they're going to be offering their insights and perspectives on different international approaches to drone integration and BV loss operations.
Yeah, this is exciting. Now, this is your first year here, Virginia, but I'll tell you, last year, this is kind of a continuation of a panel we did last year where we had a representative from India. We had a representative that kind of talked about the more global ICAO viewpoint, as well as Latin America, amongst others. So really, really cool to hear from Canada this year, and Australia. And, you know, you can't really do a global update without hearing from Europe because so many countries there and so much going on. So really excited about it. Speaking of excited, Virginia, because this is your first year, I'm sure you've heard about this from Jennifer and some of your colleagues. What are you most excited about to participate in LawTech Connect?
Well, I'm thrilled to be joining this year. As you mentioned, this is my first time attending. I'm just really excited to get the chance to connect with other stakeholders from all different corners of this industry, and really from around the world, just to hear their different perspectives and learn more about what's top of mind for everybody at this moment, and especially looking towards the future, what people see.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah Nilsson from Embry-Riddle is going to be the one kind of seaming it all together, sewing it all together, if you will. You know, with her perspective, she's actually authored a textbook that's digital on global drone regulations for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. You know, what I found really interesting, I don't know if you saw this, Virginia, I was reading Breaking Defense the other day, and they had a piece that said the new administrator, Duffy, had mentioned when he was, where was he touring? He was touring some facility, Amazon, and said, you know, basically BV loss rule coming soon. I mean, that would be amazing. So fingers crossed for all of us that we'll have something to talk about, at least from the U.S. perspective on beyond visual line of sight, other than we still don't have a rule yet, you know, by May. So, you know, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, we are. I think it'll be interesting. I don't know what the new rule is. Previously, it was like if you publish one rule, you had to delete 2 or 3. So I don't know that works real well in the FAA, like when you're focused on safety. That's just my personal opinion. But you know, we'll see how this all plays out. Really, really excited. All right. Well, we're looking forward to meeting you in Texas. And before we do, one last question, Virginia, like, you know, this is a global perspective and there are companies that really just focus on the US. Why do you think it's so important for people, whether they're in the drone industry or advanced air mobility industry, or really any emerging technology sector, to really have more of a global perspective and understand what the regulations are elsewhere?
Yeah, so just starting from like a very basic level, no matter what industry you're in, it's really critical to make sure you have a good understanding of the regulatory environment that you're going to be operating in. And nowhere is this more true than in the realm of autonomous aviation, because as you know, nearly every aspect of your operations are going to be regulated in some way. So regulation really dictates what's possible here. And I think, you know, even if you feel that you may not be directly impacted by what's happening globally, because this is, you know, an emerging industry, and for any emerging technology, as you mentioned, it's so important to kind of be paying attention to what regulators are thinking about and what is going on, because, you know, regulators kind of influence each other, and the concerns that are coming out and motivating these regulations kind of can keep you in touch with what's going to be coming next. And, you know, also this is a global industry. So even if you think the international regulations don't impact you directly, they do likely impact some of your competitors and colleagues in this space. And so from that perspective, it's just really important to be aware of what's going on if you really want to be a competitive and educated participant in this industry and on the cutting edge.
Absolutely. Very well said. Actually, you know, I think it's easy to kind of get in your own stovepipe, even not just from the regulatory standpoint, but maybe even from a technology standpoint. If like this is my space, I'm in the drone industry, you got to be talking to the geospatial people and the space people, because it's all interconnected. And that's why, and that's actually a great segue to move over to Tracy in this panel 7 on maritime. So many folks in the drone industry may not fully appreciate the interconnectedness between the air and the sea, and of course space, which you already write about, Tracy, and you deal with on a daily basis. So let's talk about your panel. Panel 7 is legal issues for autonomy in the maritime environment. So you can see the experts we have on here. It's very much, I think, attorney heavy, this particular panel, but that's okay. We've got Bill Daggett's going to moderate it. He's our fearless moderator from DAG. So let's talk a little bit, Tracy, about the so many issues in the maritime environment. When you think about the global commons, right? People think about the air. Of course, they think about sea, space. But there's nothing more prevalent on this earth than water, and we're seeing more and more autonomous vehicles in this space. So tell us a little bit about what you expect this panel to do.
Oh, thank you, Don. I think that I'm hearing some common themes among all of the panels that are going to be at LawTech Connect this year. And just to reiterate some of those commonalities, we're in a constantly evolving environment, whether that environment is in the air, over the land, on the land, under the water. All of the regulations and associated legal frameworks are going to change, as well as the policy that affects the implementation and interpretation of those rule sets. But you can't really think about interpretation until you understand what the framework is. And I appreciate, Don, you using the word stovepipe, because as you've already pointed out, the maritime environment is one in which a stovepipe can get you killed. Simply because, and I mean that both metaphorically and literally, because you really need to have the awareness of the rule sets, because you're operating in such a complex environment where real harm can occur, not only to human life, which is of course the most important thing. You really want your multi-million-dollar investment to get crushed to pieces because of a mistake associated with where you're supposed to be operating it. I don't think any business owner wants that. And I think that's also why it's important to get the military perspective, is because of the way we manage risk. It's just a little bit different than a civilian focused entity does, because we really try to start with that intent. What are we trying to accomplish? What risks will prevent us from accomplishing that? And this maritime panel will be heavy on those legal risks, but I think all the creative thinkers in the room will be able to see how that implicates their business planning. And really, this particular panel promises to offer really valuable insights into those complex challenges, because they're all arising from the introduction of autonomous vessels in that maritime environment. Like specifically, some of those international regulatory efforts to kind of springboard off that global focus is specific to the International Maritime Organization's work on developing that regulatory framework. It's going to be implemented in 2025, but really won't be enforced until probably 2032. Of course, all of those timelines can shift depending on how this complex environment continues to evolve. But that domestic legal environment of U.S.-specific regulations and requirements will be impacted by those international requirements as well. And this panel will talk about liability, responsibility, compliance, crewing, and certification, and go through the technological advancements as well as different regulatory approaches. So it is planning on being a very robust approach that takes into account not only legal frameworks, but also how those frameworks will be implemented in a real world environment.
Yeah, Tracy, when I talk to people about this event and why I created it, a big reason was to break out of legal and industry stovepipes and get those groups talking to each other. And that's why this panel not only has a lot of lawyers on it, but also two amazing folks from industry. One is from a company called Fugro, and the other is Aquatonomy. Aquatonomy is a startup out of the Pittsburgh area. I met Zwayu at CES this year. And I was like, oh, you got to come to Law Tech Connect. And I'm so glad to have her on the panel. So, to have that perspective of the technology folks in the space, and then, the legal aspects. And, you used the term framework, and Tracy, I think you would agree, what we're seeing, and I think more so in the maritime space, maybe a little bit less so, and maybe Mary Caitlin will disagree with me here. With the drone industry, the FAA took the position, we're just going to create a whole new thing, right? With AAM, they're kind of kludging together rules they already have. Charlton, I think you might agree with that in some respects, okay? But with maritime, it's like they're still trying to fit, that square peg into the round hole in terms of some very, like established international treaties. And what that means when you're talking about autonomy, like you mentioned, this idea of, like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this duty, if you're on the sea and you see someone like overboard, you have a duty to rescue. And now,
you're right.
How does an autonomous ship do that?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because we can't really talk about autonomy if we don't talk about AI, and if we don't talk about the nuance associated with uncrewed vessels. There's a lot of conversation about the legal duty that you just mentioned and how it applies to remote operated vessels. How does it apply to vessels that are not remote operated, but are operated by a mothership that is nearby? How do those legal duties flow through the responsibilities of a captain or a ship's master and the autonomous crew that are associated with that vessel's operation? And I think we're going to see a lot of exciting conversation about it that's also terrifying in a way, because as we all know from a common law background, our rule sets evolve in response to facts. And I think that's both a feature and a bug of our legal environment. There's been transition internationally from civil codes to common law-based codes, because there is a recognition that, gosh, it's impossible to anticipate every situation. But those are overarching legal responsibilities, like the duty to rescue a distressed mariner at sea, which is part of the Safety of Life at Sea international treaty that the U.S. is a party of. That is based in legal obligations that Thucydides probably would have recognized, because that safe port in a storm construct is something that applies to a global common, specifically international waters, which starts at 12.1 nautical miles off the coast of the United States. I'm often delighted by the expressions on an audience's face whenever they realize that those international legal obligations attach so close, because so many of us have a tendency to think about international waters being very far away, but they're not. And at least knowing what that legal obligation could potentially be helps in risk mitigation and technological planning, to ensure that you understand the capabilities and limitations of your technology and the potential rule sets that you might have to abide by. We can't give you all the answers in a panel, but we can certainly get you started thinking.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, this is why I love her. She's quoting Greek philosophers, during the preview. This is what y'all have in store. It's going to be beautiful stuff. Really excited to have you back, Tracy. I know you couldn't make it last year, but I met Tracy at Duke Law many years ago with one of my mentors who runs their Center for Law, Ethics, and National Security, Major General Charlie Dunlap. And we happened to be on a panel together, and kind of became friends ever since. So great to have you back, Tracy. Really looking forward to this panel. And last but certainly not least, we've all been waiting with bated breath on beyond visual line of sight rules, right, Mary Caitlin Ray? But there's a really big thing that goes along with that called, UAS traffic management, UTM, and kind of general airspace awareness, and possibly even protection of that airspace. So lots of ground to cover on your panel 8, which is managing drones in this advanced airspace. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to cover on this one.
Hey, thanks, John. I'm really, really thrilled to be back at LawTech Connect talking about this topic. I think it was, 2 years ago, maybe at Energy Drone, where we presented sort of what came out of the BV loss arc and just like crystal ball predictions of what we might see from a BV loss rule and when. I think that's still very much, up for discussion. But I'm really excited to start unpacking that with, a really, really fantastic group of experts who are going to be joining me. We'll have Liz Foro from Hogan Lovells as moderator. We'll have Virginia's colleague, Jennifer Richter from Akin. We'll hopefully have Jessica Brightman from the FAA if they're, going to be permitted to travel. MC Kruskicki and Ben Berlin, dear friend and former colleague of mine at the FAA, who's now at Zipline. So really nice combination, I think, of, legal and, tech business stakeholders, which is what LawTech Connect is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. MC, you mentioned her. She was on our Dawn of Autonomy last fall. If you guys missed that, her company's called AX Enterprise with a Z in Enterprise. I always have to get that right. And she was like one of these pioneers, at the Air Force Research Lab that actually created like UTM systems. And, they're running the New York test site up there and that 50-mile corridor and doing so much more. So here's a person that, and I'm collaborating also now in North Dakota with Grand Sky. As well. So here's a person that's designed UTM that is involved in a daily basis on it. And then, of course, you got Zipline with Ben that you mentioned, who kind of created like a proprietary, UTM, if you will. They can, of course, talk to others, and they're very much involved in that Dallas Key site and that operational evaluation of UTM. But really excited to hear these real-world updates on what's happening in this space and everything like that. I think part of the value also of this panel, Mary Caitlin, is just the practical advice. Whether we're in this era where people have to continue getting waivers to go beyond visual line of sight, or there's something better. I don't think there will be finalized anything better, but maybe a notice of public rulemaking possibly. How important do you think it is for the audience to hear kind of these practical tips and lessons learned from your panel and some of these others we've heard from earlier today?
I think it's critical, and I think it's one of the reasons that people keep coming back to events like this. There's a really nice combination of kind of talking, high level about the issues and also, really brass tacks, like, okay, what does this mean for your business? And I think even without knowing exactly what we can expect from the BV loss rule, I think, from various sources, including the ARC, we have a sense of at least what topics the FAA is planning to address. And those will have real life consequences and impacts on, businesses that are, currently operating BV loss or want to, and I know as we had discussed it, Energy Drone, this is going far beyond just BV loss operations, right? At least that's the recommendation from the ARC. I think we may expect to see a much more fulsome rule that kind of provides a comprehensive framework, right? From, aircraft certification, pilot requirements, maintenance, really sort of soup to nuts in one rule that applies, to drone operations in what we've previously seen, in the traditional manned space spread out across different FARs. Kind of to your point on the FAA's, kind of initial approach to, with drones, we're going to fit this square peg in a round hole and make everyone get regulatory exemptions, and then, kind of evolving towards Part 107 and now taking it a step further where the FAA is finally saying, we need to create, a standalone framework for these types of aircraft.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to me, like the 2016 Part 107 was that kind of like initial standalone rule. But then I think as people wanted to do more complex operations other than just real estate photography, and not to denigrate real estate photography, I mean, super important, a cinematography, all of these things have been really groundbreaking initial use cases, but you know, once you get in the drone delivery and people start talking about Part 135, which applies to crewed aircraft, as Charlton knows, you know, and like the weird requirements, like you have to, I remember, Mary Caitlin, I interviewed you a long time ago for an article I did for the Commercial UAV News about drone deliveries, and this idea that you're supposed to have like an operating manual on board for Part 135, which again, for a drone, like makes no sense. And so like for all of those little nuances to have to say, well, okay, we're not going to require that piece of it. And so that's kind of what people have to deal with in this space.
Yeah, and speaking of commonalities, you know, that sounds a lot like what Tracy was talking about, you know, and having to, you know, confront the realities of autonomy and AI, and how do you meet requirements that just don't fit? You know, in the case of the law of the sea, you know, rescuing a person, how does an uncrewed ship do that? You know, how does an unmanned aircraft, you know, meet requirements related to seatbelts and manuals? And, you know, so far the FAA's addressed that by, you know, requiring, you know, the certificate holders to apply for exemptions from every single, you know, regulation that does not apply. But that's not really, you know, that's not really scalable long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We have seen some great progress, and I'm excited to talk about those, you know, some, let's just call them template waivers, if you will, that wound up in the Federal Register, and kind of getting the how goes it on that, you know, and you know, again, the update from the Dallas Key site. I mean, people globally are excited about that, Mary Caitlin. I mean, I was at the GUTMA, Global UTM Association's event back in May. We went down to Dallas. We saw this in action, and people from all over the world came to that. So really, really excited to hear more from your panel and from you, of course, with your background and expertise. So greatly appreciate everything you do, and very much looking forward to it. All right. Well, that's basically kind of the around the world, if you will, for panels 5 through 8. So these are our afternoon sessions. You know, we've got a full day of activities planned for you at Law Tech Connect. And just a reminder, everybody, you know, our registration fee is super low. It's only $249 early bird, but that does include a 3-day expo hall pass. It includes the social networking hour on Sunday evening. Even though there's a separate registration, if you're registered for our workshop, you get the free drinks and food, thanks to our handful of sponsors there as well. And, you know, we feed you on Monday, and we give you a lot of really cool swag. So it's an amazing day. We think you're going to love it. You get a full week of live activities from Sunday night all the way through Thursday if you choose to stay that long. We hope you guys will all join us. We do have a number of scholars joining us this year, thanks to some of our sponsors for that program. Again, very excited to have some students from UND and Vaughn College, and some other folks in the industry that are able to come, thanks to some of those sponsors as well. So that's all she wrote for today, everybody. I want to just, we'll drop that link for the, not only for the Law Tech Connect registration, of course, but the separate link, and that's just your email. There's no money involved in the social networking event. Everybody is welcome to come to it. You know, we're supporting the folks that register in terms of the drinks and food. So hopefully you will all be there, and you'll get to meet these amazing people. You get to mingle with them Sunday night before the event even starts. So thank you all so much. Thank you. Before we leave, I want to real quick go around the horn, and so give everybody an opportunity to make any closing remarks and to tell people how they can reach you. So I'm going to start backwards this time, and I'm going to start with Tracy.
I am really excited about this event, and I think there'll be great lessons learned that are applicable in a real world sense, like Mary Caitlin mentioned, but also it'll be a great window into what is going to happen thematically. So let's get cinematographic about it with our just conversations about where we'd like to see this legal environment go.
All right, very good, very good. And you'll meet Tracy in person there. Charlton.
Hey, yeah, you can find me at cevans@endstatesolutions.com or at our website of the same name. And frankly, I'm just eager to get into it with the folks on the panel to talk about what the reality is versus what people may expect to be happening in the industry, and maybe sort out some timeline expectations, and kind of peel back the layers a little bit and get to some industry expertise that can take off the rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, the reality is we've seen some death and dying in the AAM space, right? Lilium one, just saw Volocopter, two German companies. So I think we're going to see a culling of the herd, and we're going to see more and more of that. But really excited to hear more from your panel, Charlton, and those practical realities. Virginia.
Yeah, so you can reach me at Hiner, just my first initial last name, first old last name, whatever, at akingump.com. You can also find me on the Akin website. But I'm super excited to have this conversation with everyone about the global regulatory space in this area, and sort of get like a much more high level view and zoom out a little bit on what's going on and what people are thinking about globally here.
Yeah, very cool. And bringing it back home, I do want to give a quick plug. I did see that Akin has an amazing executive order tracker for those trying to keep up with what is happening in the United States, and not just in this autonomy space, just in general. Check out their website because they're tracking all of them. So thank you for that work. I mean, that is yeoman's work for sure.
Yeah, that's been a big resource throughout this like crazy period of tumultuousness. And it's, obviously there's so many executive orders coming out like every single day, it seems. And so we wanted to kind of put together this resource and have everything in one place. And it's been really helpful for people. So please check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mary Caitlin, you guys are thought leaders at Crowell. I mean, you've got blogs and all kinds of things on your website as well. Go ahead. Any final comments from you?
We do, yeah. I'll give a plug for we've got a fantastic transportation blog that was launched in the new year. So I can personally be reached at mray@crowell.com or through our website, crowell.com. And through the website, you can also reach our transportation blog, which talks really about all modes, air, land, sea, and space. But we're, tracking, up to the minute updates with posts every day. So check out that blog. And I'm really excited to be back at Law Tech Connect. I'm excited to, connect with those of you, that I've met at prior events. Of course, you, Dawn and Tracy, excited to see you both. Excited to meet you, Virginia and Charlton, and, everyone else that will be joining us as panelists. And then, of course, our audience, which I think keeps growing every year. It's really exciting to see. So I'm really excited to talk about these issues and to learn, from the rest of the folks who are going to be there.
Yeah, thank you so much. And one last comment. I mean, we will be taping these. We will be putting these panels out as Law Tech Connect online, and probably an article too for Autonomy Global in 15 languages after the fact. But I have to say, nothing beats being there in person. I think we all experienced COVID and like having to all stay home and just do things on Zoom. There's nothing, I think, more rewarding than getting to meet these folks in person and the other folks in their panel and that human-to-human interaction. So we hope to see you at Exponential. We hope to see you at Law Tech Connect. Register now. We'll drop that link. There's the QR code, so you can register today. And I think this early bird rate ends in a couple weeks, like in early April, and that's creeping up sooner than you realize. So please take a minute. If you're going to come and you just haven't bothered to register yet, do it now. And we hope to see you there. So thank you all so much. Really looking forward to this. Looking forward to seeing all of you out there. And that's all she wrote for now.